Hi, I'm Dr. Teresa Seavers.
Teresa Seavers was due at work, and she didn't arrive.
It was in the river, and it took me a minute to click in, and then I threw out.
In the summer of 2015, the murder of Dr. Teresa Seavers, a prominent holistic medicine physician, shocked the nation. Found bludgeoned to death in her Bonita Springs kitchen, the gruesome crime scene immediately drew widespread attention. Born in Darby, Connecticut, Teresa was always a strong-willed, outspoken individual, unafraid to stand up for her beliefs. She was this magical, no-nonsense kid, and she never changed, recalled her sister Anne. Teresa grew up in a single-parent household after her parents divorced, with her mother, Marianne Groves, raising her and her siblings. She excelled academically, becoming valedictorian of Ansonia High School in 1986. Initially aiming to be a physician's assistant, a mentor encouraged her to pursue a medical degree. Teresa attended medical school in Dominica and graduated in 1996, completing her residency at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Drawn to Florida for its warm climate, Teresa met Mark Seavers and they married on the beach in 2003. The couple was an unlikely pair. Teresa was determined and outspoken, while Mark was easygoing and forgetful. Despite their differences, they built a life together in Bonita Springs, where Teresa established her practice, the Restorative Health and Healing Center. Mark served as the office manager. Teresa's passion for holistic medicine grew over time as she sought alternative ways to treat her patients. She firmly believed that people were not being provided with the right information on healing and dedicated herself to making a difference through her practice. Over time, Teresa became most well known for her work with transgender patients in Bonita Springs. Her practice thrived, often boasting long waiting lists as she combined traditional and alternative treatments, emphasizing the connection between mind, body, and spirit. Beyond her medical career, Teresa was a dedicated mother to her daughters, Josephine and Carmi, and an active community member. In early 2015, she helped her daughters raise money for Our Mother's Home, a charity supporting teen mothers and trafficking victims, a cause Teresa deeply cared about. She was also known for making healthy changes within her own family, inspiring her mother to take supplements, encouraging her brother to hire a trainer, and introducing her loved ones to veganism through her exceptional cooking. Teresa's ambition extended to developing a TV show, Pathways to Healing, focusing on energy medicine, where she discussed the importance of physical, mental, and spiritual health. However, her promising plans were tragically cut short in June 2015. After attending a family reunion in Connecticut, Teresa returned to Florida alone on June 28, 2015 to prepare for work. She texted her husband Mark, confirming her safe arrival. However, the next morning, Teresa didn't show up at her office. Concerned, Mark tracked her phone, which was still at home. Unable to reach her, he asked family friend Dr. Mark Petries to check on her. Entering the Seavers home through the garage, Dr. Petries found Teresa lying lifeless in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor, a hammer covered in blood and hair beside her. She had been brutally attacked from behind, and it was clear she was beyond help. Fearing the assailant might still be inside, Petries quickly exited and called the police. When police arrived at the Seavers home, it was clear there had been a break-in. The front door was pried open, and Teresa's autopsy revealed she had been savagely beaten with a hammer, sustaining 17 lacerations to her head, skull fractures, and defensive wounds on her arms. Her purse and luggage had been rummaged through, but nothing was stolen, and the community was gripped by fear of a potential random killer. However, Sheriff Mike Scott soon announced they believed Teresa's murder was targeted. In late August, arrests were made. 25-year-old Jimmy Rogers and 47-year-old Curtis Wayne Wright, both from Missouri. The news stunned those who knew Teresa and her husband Mark, as Curtis was a longtime friend of Mark's. The two had been close since high school, with Mark supporting Curtis through legal troubles, including a meth lab arrest. Curtis had even comforted Mark after Teresa's death. Jimmy had no personal connection to Teresa, but had a criminal past, having been involved in illegal firearms and served time in prison. Speculation about their involvement grew, especially after it was revealed that Jimmy had traveled to Florida around the time of Teresa's murder under suspicious circumstances. Investigators later uncovered that Curtis and Jimmy met while incarcerated and maintained contact after their release. In December, chilling details emerged. Teresa's husband, Mark, was implicated in orchestrating her murder. According to an affidavit, Mark, Curtis, and Jimmy planned the murder to cash in on Teresa's 5 life insurance policies worth $4.4 million. Mark was not yet charged, but evidence pointed to his direct involvement, including providing Curtis and Jimmy with the security code to disable the home alarm. Jimmy confessed to his girlfriend, Taylor, that Curtis had promised him $10,000 for his role in the murder, and he described using a hammer to kill Teresa. Items from the crime, such as gloves and a jumpsuit, were discarded by Taylor at Jimmy's instruction, but later recovered by investigators. Mark, despite denying any role in the crime, quickly became a prime suspect. His statements about his marriage contradicted evidence showing both he and Teresa were engaged in extramarital affairs and considering divorce. Financial instability was another apparent motive, as Mark claimed they lived month to month despite having substantial life insurance policies. Investigators found he had disposed of computers from Teresa's medical practice the day after her funeral, raising further suspicions. Curtis and Jimmy staged the Seavers home to look like a robbery gone wrong. Waiting for Teresa to arrive, investigations revealed constant communication between Mark and Curtis, including using burner phones. Mark expressed concerns about the security of their messages, hinting at the careful plotting behind Teresa's murder. Despite attempts to create a facade, the evidence trail was damning, implicating all 3 men. Following the release of incriminating documents, Florida's Department of Children and Families began reviewing the welfare of Teresa and Mark's daughters, Josephine and Carmi. Concerns grew as Mark monitored the girls' interactions with Teresa's family, and tensions mounted between the Seavers and Teresa's relatives. Initially, Teresa's family believed Mark had adored his wife, but revelations about the state of their marriage shifted their perspective. Teresa's close friend, Lenka Spiska, described Teresa's unhappiness and hinted at underlying marital issues, painting a bleaker picture of her life. By late 2015, Curtis pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in a deal requiring him to assist the prosecution. Soon after, Mark was arrested and charged with Teresa's murder, showing no emotion at his arrest. He was held on a $4.4 million bond, the exact amount of Teresa's life insurance policies. With Mark in custody, the state took Josephine and Carmi, placing them with a non-relative caregiver. Witnesses later testified about Mark's cold demeanor after Teresa's murder, including attending the beach and hosting gatherings immediately after her funeral. His odd behavior, coupled with his efforts to steer the investigation away from finding the killer, raised suspicions further. Curtis's confession revealed the murder had been financially motivated, with Mark promising Curtis a share of the life insurance money. As legal proceedings unfolded, Mark and Jimmy faced first-degree murder charges, with the possibility of life imprisonment or the death penalty. Mark's defense argued against the charges, but mounting evidence, including testimonies from Curtis and forensic findings linking Jimmy to the crime scene, painted a grim picture. During Jimmy's trial in 2019, the prosecution highlighted the carefully orchestrated murder plot involving Mark, Curtis, and Jimmy. Although Jimmy's defense attempted to distance him from direct involvement, the evidence, such as fibers and DNA from Jimmy's jumpsuit found near Teresa's body, contradicted their claims. Key witness Taylor Shoemaker, Jimmy's girlfriend, testified about her knowledge of the crime and Jimmy's involvement, despite receiving financial support for her testimony. Curtis's highly anticipated testimony confirmed the prosecution's narrative, implicating both Jimmy and Mark in the murder and laying bare the cold, calculated nature of the crime. Curtis testified that Mark first approached him about killing Teresa at his wedding in May 2015. Mark, fearful of losing his daughters in a custody battle, promised Curtis $100,000 for the murder, suggesting it be staged as a burglary gone wrong. Unwilling to act alone, Curtis enlisted Jimmy's help. During closing arguments, the prosecution underscored the conspiracy between Mark, Curtis, and Jimmy, driven by financial gain from Teresa's life insurance. Jimmy Rogers was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, despite attempts by his defense to secure a retrial. Mark Seavers' trial began in November 2019, with the prosecution arguing that Teresa's murder was meticulously planned. Curtis described how Mark had left access to the house and provided the security code. On the night of the murder, Curtis and Jimmy lay in wait, grabbing a hammer from the garage as Teresa returned home. Testimonies highlighted Mark's strange behavior, such as his emotionless response when informed of Teresa's death and his lies about knowing Curtis. Ultimately, the jury found Mark guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Despite Mark's pleas of innocence during the sentencing phase, Judge Bruce Kyle sentenced him to death, reflecting the calculated nature of his actions. Teresa's family, deeply affected by the loss, expressed relief at the verdict, but also the tragic reality that the Seavers daughters had lost both parents. Teresa's mother, Mary Ann, made an emotional impact statement, emphasizing the profound impact of Teresa's death on her family. In cases of spousal murder, the spouse is often the first suspect. Initially, Mark Seavers seemed to have a solid alibi, but it quickly fell apart as Jimmy Rogers and Curtis Wright left behind a trail of incriminating evidence that painted a clear picture of the crime. The murder of Teresa Seavers sent shockwaves through Bonita Springs, particularly within the holistic medicine community, where Teresa was affectionately known as Mother Teresa for her dedication to her patients. Driven by greed, Mark orchestrated his wife's brutal murder, not only taking Teresa's life, but also tearing apart his own family. On the night of her death, Teresa returned home, expecting the comfort of her own space, but instead encountered her husband's best friend wielding a hammer. In those final moments, Teresa likely realized that the true betrayal came from the man she once loved and supported, the man she had financially sustained, and the father of her children. Mark's actions were a chilling reminder of how easily greed can override love and loyalty. He not only snuffed out the life of a compassionate, dedicated woman, but also shattered the innocence of his daughters, Josephine and Carmi. They were left not only without a mother, but ultimately without a father too, as Mark's arrest and conviction stripped them of the only parent they had left. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe to Secret Sleuths for more gripping true crime cases. Don't forget to turn on the bell to stay updated on our latest episodes.